No Child Left Behind promised to close achievement gaps through testing, yet turned schools into test prep factories that narrowed what students actually learned. This is Unintended Consequences, Episode 77. In the spring of 2006, a fifth grade teacher in a Houston elementary school spent 45 minutes each morning drilling students on released items from the Texas State Assessment. The scheduled science experiment on plant growth was set aside. The school had missed its adequate yearly progress target the previous year and faced restructuring if scores did not rise. The No Child Left Behind Act was signed by President George W. Bush on January 8, 2002, after strong bipartisan support in Congress. Its central aim was to close persistent achievement gaps between white and Asian students and their Black, Hispanic, and low-income peers. The law required states to measure and publicly report performance for every subgroup. Advocates, including civil rights organizations that had long criticized the lack of transparency in school outcomes, saw the law as an extension of earlier equity efforts. At the time, many states already administered some form of standardized testing, but results were rarely disaggregated or tied to consequences. Policymakers believed that shining a light on subgroup performance, combined with sanctions for schools that failed to show adequate yearly progress, would force districts to direct resources where they were most needed. The approach reflected a broader turn-of-the-century faith that clear metrics and accountability could drive improvement in public institutions. Supporters reasoned that without explicit subgroup targets, schools could continue to post acceptable overall averages while leaving entire categories of students behind. The law required annual reading and mathematics testing in grades 3 through 8 and once in high school, with science assessments added later. States had to define proficient performance and demonstrate that all subgroups were making steady gains toward 100% proficiency by 2014. Early results showed rising percentages of students labeled proficient on state tests. The Department of Education under Secretary Rod Page promoted the law as a civil rights victory. Some analysts noted that the design created strong incentives for schools to focus narrowly on tested material. Proponents pointed out that the statute did include science testing beginning in 2007 through 2008. The adequate yearly progress calculation itself continued to rest overwhelmingly on the reading and mathematics results. Because sanctions were attached to a single composite score, many schools responded by reallocating instructional time away from untested subjects. A 2007 survey by the Center on Education Policy found that 44% of districts had reduced time for social studies, science, art, and physical education to increase reading and math minutes. In some cases, the shift was dramatic. One California elementary school eliminated its music program entirely after 2 consecutive years of missing targets. Teachers reported spending weeks on test-taking strategies and practice exams rather than deeper exploration of topics. The high stakes also encouraged statistical and behavioral gaming. Schools sometimes focused resources on bubble students near the proficiency cutoff while giving less attention to those already likely to pass or those far below. In extreme instances, educators altered answer sheets. The Atlanta cheating scandal that surfaced in 2011 involved dozens of schools where administrators changed responses to protect their jobs and avoid state takeover. On the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is not tied to school sanctions, gains in reading and math were modest and uneven. Gaps between demographic groups narrowed only slightly. The measurement system had made the tested scores the primary output that determined survival, so that is what the system produced. By the early 2010s, criticism of the law's rigidity had grown across the political spectrum. The 2015 Every Student Succeeds Act replaced No Child Left Behind's federal 100% proficiency timeline with greater state flexibility in setting goals and designing interventions. Annual testing requirements remained, however, and many states continued to tie teacher evaluations and school ratings to test results. Some districts later experimented with broader accountability measures that included chronic absenteeism or access to advanced coursework. Proficiency rates on state assessments continued to rise in many places. Observers noted that the underlying narrowing of curriculum had proven difficult to reverse. When a single, high stakes metric becomes the dominant signal of success, organizations will optimize for that metric even when it diverges from broader goals. Complex systems, such as schools, contain many valued outcomes. Intense pressure on one subset tends to reduce attention to the rest. Policymakers today considering new accountability systems in education, healthcare, or public administration face the same design question: which activities will be de emphasized once the scoreboard is installed? And how can the system protect space for outcomes that are harder to count? That's the case for today. The lessons tend to travel further when you share them, so send this one to someone who'd find it useful and subscribe wherever you're listening. See you tomorrow. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at NARA Network. Links in the show notes. Quick tip from the network: try Tesla Shorts Time next, your daily deep dive into everything Tesla. Every NARA Network show is free at naranetwork.com. Following the long arcs, story trackers on naranetwork.com follow major programs across episodes: Tesla, SpaceX, AI, space science, and more. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.